If you really analyze the text, and I'm not just talking about Sumerian text, you have to go into several different versions of text, the Enuma Elish and Seven Tablets of Creation, the Atrahasis epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh. You go into the Emerald Tablets. You discover that there was already a hominid here, and it was genetically modified. That was our cousin before Homo sapiens existed. What did they do to us to make us into this slave race to do the work for them? They disconnected our DNA. That's what you have called now junk DNA. It's not junk, guys. It's unplugged DNA. Why did they unplug it? Because our cousins, unlike you've been taught, were way smarter than us. I'm not talking technologically smarter. I'm talking about spiritually smarter. More in tune with nature, more in tune with the universe, more in tune with the planet itself, the Schumann resonant frequency of the earth. They had bigger brains, proven because we found the skulls all over the planet. They had, probably because of bigger brains, most likely had bigger pineal glands, which is your spiritual antenna. All humans right now, we have billions of magnetite crystals in our brains. We don't even use them. They probably had access to their magnetite crystals, which is what turtles use to navigate the oceans to come back to where they're going to lay their eggs, and birds. They flock to the south in the winter and so forth, all using the magnetic field. Well, we have the same capability, but right now we've been disconnected from using that. If a tsunami comes inland, before it even hits, all the wild animals run to the mountains and the hills. You never see wild animals getting swept away by a tsunami. But you see people, we just stay right out there. And we're taking, look, the tsunami's coming. I'm live on Instagram. I mean, it's crazy. So we've been disconnected. Our DNA has been disconnected. Our consciousness has been reduced. They've already scientifically proven and found out that a worship gene was embedded into the human genome. And they don't know who did it, but they can tell you that it was around 200,000 years ago, the same time that they discovered that chromosome number 2 in the human body was taken out, fused together, and 2 telomere caps were put on each end. Again, this is something done in a laboratory, admitted by mainstream scientists, but they can't figure out who did it. They can only tell you when. Oh, about 200,000 years ago. Well, what do the tablets say? 200,000 years ago is when they first genetically modified the existing hominid on this planet. Harvard scientists in America just discovered that under the most pristine conditions, a human being can live for how many years? 120. Well, it says the same thing in the Bible. It says the same thing in the Sumerian text. This is with all the GMOs and the genetic seeds and the tortured meat and everything else. And the pollution, under the most pristine conditions, we should live to 120 years. Now, what they said is, okay, well, why are we dying at 120 years and less? What's the reason? So that's when they came, and I told you about before, the chromosome number 2 and the telomere caps. They realized that these telomere caps, which are they store buffer material that allows, when your cells and DNA replicate, it allows information to not be lost in a transference, because your body's consistently regenerating over and over again. But when the buffer material in these caps run out, that's when your body starts the death process. So we were capped. They put a cap on us. And if you look at some of the ancient texts, biblical or either Sumerian, Emerald Tablets, even some of the Indian books, you'll discover that people were living for thousands of years. Well, what happened? All of a sudden, they stopped living for, these are human beings, not gods. Humans were living for thousands of years. Now, mainstream science wants to say, oh, it's because they had more oxygen and all this kind of crazy stuff. No, man. We've been genetically modified, just like the seeds on this planet. That's why. So they went and said, okay, let's look at some mice. So they took some mice at Harvard, and they accessed the telomere caps, and they put together a sequence that prevented them from shrinking or losing the buffer material. And all of a sudden, these mice lived three times their normal lifespan. 3 times their normal lifespan. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is, how does this work with the law of attraction? What does DNA have to do with the law of attraction? It has a lot to do with the law of attraction, actually, because the law of attraction is actually initiated through the DNA. And how many people here have ever heard somebody say, I get a download? People say, I get a download. Don't laugh at those people, because they're really getting a download. I've seen people laugh before and chuckle when people walk away. Let me tell you something. You don't understand quantum. If you think it's funny, you don't understand quantum mechanics. Because just like I told you about DNA being able to be a hard drive, which, by the way, now Microsoft has created the first DNA hard drive that really works. So things like teleportation of biological entities and all that stuff is all becoming a reality because the only thing stopping us was storage space. But anyway, scientists have also found out now that DNA sends and receives wireless signals, wireless information. We have a built-in Wi-Fi system in our bodies already. So, and it's just broadcasted between 8 to 10 feet away from the human body. So all times of day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're all downloading information directly from the ether of space-time itself. And what's in the ether of space-time? Remember, a human being can only see on a very small spectrum of light. So what we're seeing right now is literally just part of the hologram. Just part of the hologram. Everything else, there's trillions and trillions of electromagnetic waves passing in you, through you, and out of you at this existing very moment right now as I'm speaking. That's all everything is electromagnetic waves. That's all that really exists. Besides that and consciousness, those two things collapse together and create what we call matter. So right now, we can't see these other waves of light, but they're there. But what's happening is if the DNA in your body is oscillating at a specific frequency that matches a frequency of an electromagnetic wave that's already out there, you can download information from that wave. What do waves carry? They carry information. Electromagnetic waves carry information. What I'm giving you guys is real peer-reviewed science. Write it down and go look it up and research it. All the information contained in the entire universe is passing in us all around us at all times. There is no original idea. If you're just sitting around going, man, I have a great idea, I'm going to invent so-and-so. Not really. What happened was you got on the right frequency and you downloaded the information directly from the universe. There's a professor called James S. Gates Jr., but he's a specialist in supersymmetry and theoretical physics. And this guy is one of the leaders in this in the world. He's not just some guy who plays around with this. He's the leader. He gets together this super team of quantum physicists, and they start digging into the ether of space-time to figure out what is floating in us and around us. What is this space-time? What is space? And he discovers that it operates on something called Adinkra codes. And these Adinkra codes can be traced back to the Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa, who actually were the original Egyptians from the land of Kem. They later migrated out to Mali. But they have these codes. These codes represent, they're flat codes on cloth, but when you take them into a third dimension, they represent sophisticated numerical mathematics that depict something called error-correcting codes in our modern science. And these error-correcting codes are what run search engine browsers and websites. So what is